right, Mets'd Up listeners, we are back with a bit of a delayed emergency episode. As you guys know, James is trekking through the jungles of Vietnam right now. He is in the middle of absolute nowhere. I believe he's in the kitchen of the hostel he's staying in right now to try and get any sort of internet connection on his phone. We have to talk about Frankie Montas news. We didn't want to put out an episode without mentioning this because it is important. This is also one of our guys, Frankie Montas, here on the podcast. As we know, he is out for 6 to 8 weeks due to a lat injury. He hasn't even begun throwing, which basically puts him to, at the best case scenario, being ready to start maybe in May, probably more likely June if everything goes really well. And we just wanted to talk about it. What's going on with Frankie Montas? What's going on with the rotation and everything like that? Make sure you guys are following us, subscribe to the Mets'd Up Podcast YouTube channel. I truly have no clue how long this is going to be, but we just wanted to drop a little bit something for you guys so you have some content on Frankie Montas. James, out in Vietnam, what are you feeling about Frankie? What have you been hearing?
I mean, it just sucks that this was like the first signing the Mets made this offseason, and now immediately he gets hurt before he starts throwing, and he was already injury prone. And you kind of have these murmurs of people being critical of David Stearns, and it's also us have been some of the most positive people about David Stearns since he was hired for this job, and he's done a great job in general. This is probably the first time where something he's done can come a bit into question. I think there's two sides of that where it's like, maybe giving Frankie Montas $34 million guaranteed dollars in the beginning of December before the pitching market moved a lot, especially seeing the contracts that wound up being given to Jack Flaherty and Nick Pivetta. Doesn't look that good in retrospect, but also that's kind of revisionist history because the Mets needed to fill 3 or 4 starting rotation spots, and they were able to give Frankie Montas less money than guys got early, but it was more money than guys got late. The Mets just had too many starting pitching holes to really wait out the market to the extent of teams like the Padres and the Tigers wound up doing. They already had pretty good starting rotation depth, but in terms of where this leaves the Mets rotation right now, truthfully and honestly, it just kind of fucking sucks. Like, he's someone who's going to be relied on to be a decent arm in the middle of the rotation, to throw innings and not be bad. He was basically this is supposed to be this year's Luis Severino, which is like, let us trust you to give 160 innings for a 3.7, 3.8 ERA. And the fact that you're probably not going to see him until, I don't know, I think I'm a little more pessimistic than you. I think the middle of June right now at the earliest is the best case scenario. I think we get to a spot this year where Frankie Montas winds up as like the big trade deadline acquisition, which sucks. It just pushes everyone up a spot. We don't really have enough good guys in the middle of this rotation to feel comfortable with everyone being pushed up a spot.
It is pretty funny how every single year Tyler McGill comes into spring training, you will not be in the rotation, and there is some sort of injury without fail every single year during spring training that gets him right back into that opening day spot where he's going to be on the roster to start the year. He's going to be pitching. He's going to be relied upon. And I think that's the biggest thing here is we got the Tyler McGill text. You up? Now we got to see what Tyler McGill's got. He's been in this scenario before, which at least that's something that makes me feel better is that he has done this multiple times, so he should feel comfortable. But yeah, going back to what you mentioned about David Stearns and kind of the first bit of like being a human, it seems like in the front office for him, it definitely feels like maybe we got very aggressive. I know we like Frankie Montas on the podcast, and I'm sure those are very similar reasons why David Stearns and other pitching people around baseball like Frankie Montas. But this has always been the fear with him is that he is an injury-prone player. He gets hurt almost every single year without fail. You were banking on him being healthy, kind of like you did with Severino, as you mentioned.
Yeah, now kind of the hope is that someone else can kind of become the theoretical Severino. Like maybe Clay Holmes just moves up a rung and becomes, again, in air quotes, the Severino. Maybe Griffin Canning just winds up as the Severino, where you look up in July and you're like, does Griffin Canning have a 3.6 ERA right now? Is he have a 24% strikeout rate? Like we heard Lance Brodowski talk about a lot of the positives that Griffin Canning can do this year with some very simple pitch mix changes. I'm sure that's a big point of emphasis right now. But I also wonder, going back to just Tyler McGill, because if I talk about every single guy in this glut who's supposed to be like the 6-7 starters for the Mets going into the season, you guys are going to hate me. McGill still by far has the best upside of anybody in that list because McGill still has 3 pitches he can rely on. His 4, I guess, kind of, with the fastball, the 2-seam, and then the cutter and the slider. If the splitter ever gets any level of consistency, even a little bit of consistency, it's already an outlier pitch. Like you're literally looking at a guy who can be like 160 innings and a 3.6 ERA because he's putting on the workloads year after year. Where Tyler McGill has the foundation to be a back-end starter very easily and very simply. And he has the fastball, and he has the sinker, and he has the cutter. So he already has a way to at least get ahead of hitters on both sides of the plate. If there's any consistency in that splitter, you guys hate me. I know you guys fucking hate me. It's been 4 years talking about Tyler McGill having potential. But, like, again, if that pitch has a modicum of consistency, like he's legitimately reliable for, and this team right now desperately needs a reliable for because we just lost a guy who's supposed to be our 3/4. And then I guess past that, I hear a lot of people talking about Paul Blackburn. And this is kind of the reason I think David Stearns did not acquire Paul Blackburn last year at the deadline. give us innings now, and we have you next year, give us innings then. I don't think anyone could have foreseen a spinal fluid leak. This is a jaw-dropping injury, and people are like, he'll be ready for opening day. I'd be mystified if he's ready for opening day. This is like if transmission in your car starts leaking. You know you're not getting that thing fixed with a simple stop at the mechanic. It's very fucking serious. So it's just a lot of it comes back down now to Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning. We hope Blackburn's ready. And then I wonder if they're thinking a little bit about Jose Budo now to come back to the rotation. I wonder if that's a consideration right now. We haven't heard that mentioned. I'm sure spring training games start going in the next week or so. We're going to know for sure because either he's going to be starting or he's going to be relieving. But that's kind of where we're at right now. And it's not, it's truthfully going to be very blunt. It's not the super great place to be.
Oh, Todd Father. Remember the good old days when we would have the cards in the binders, but then they'd get all messed up and we're trying to sell online and it's just real clunky. They really actually weren't the good old days, were they?
No, they were definitely not. But now there's a better way. The Arena Club has been dominant with this. You get to trade your cards, you could sell them. But the best part for me is getting them graded. I love everything about that. This new age of getting cards graded. You could display them on your online showroom, your mobile device. It's the coolest thing in the world.
Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the all-in-one trading card platform. You have to sign up for an account at arenaclub.com/foul. Just like Todd Father mentioned, there's a process that combines AI and human grading to get the job done. Right now, 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul. Use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul. Code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase.
I feel like there's also a possibility for a Jose Quintana reunion. I haven't really heard any rumors or murmurings about it whatsoever, but because of Frankie Montas' length of the injury, like at worst or at best, it seems like he's going to miss at least 2 months, let's say, of pitching right now. It's going to take him time to get back. Maybe you give Jose Quintana, you go to him and you're like, hey, 1 year, $5 million. You're basically going to have 2 months of starting pitching at the major league level. And at the absolute worst, we might just have to cut you if you're not pitching well, or if Frankie Montas comes back and looks great, we might cut you and you got $5 million for 2 months. Or we can then trade you to a team that just needs some starting pitching for like anything, like just keep you around, keep you pitching. Because I feel like a lot of Mets fans forget too, like Jose Quintana was amazing down the stretch for the Mets. He was a huge part of this team's push for the playoffs in a ride or die, go home, lose, go home game. He went out and threw 6 shutout innings against the Brewers. So I feel like I'd like to see a Jose Quintana reunion, along with the fact that we do have a young prospect in the waiting. Maybe this is the Brandon Sproat time to just come up and shine. And if he really dazzles people in spring training, can make an impact here.
He's the true wild card, but also with Quintana, I feel like you very purposely mentioned the 2 months because Montas would have to go in the 60-day IL because we're maxed out in 40-man spots right now. And David Stearns, the day before his injury, was like, we're good. This is the team we have. I feel like they probably already knew this about Frankie Montas, which him saying that the day before makes me like, oh, okay, I don't think they're going to bring back Jose Quintana. But if he does go on the 60-day, and then we do have the 40-man roster spot, it does make legitimate sense to bring him back. But I keep coming back to Sproat. I keep thinking about Brandon Sproat because he just seems the package, everything he is, the fact he's 24 years old, how long he pitched in the SEC, how well he pitched last year in AA, he seems very, very, very ready. I don't think there's any chance he breaks camp. I don't think there's any chance he's on the team in the first 2 weeks of April. But now with everyone, like I said before, getting pushed up a spot, he kind of is the first alternate. He's the guy. If something else happens to another starting pitcher, it's like, how can you not give him a very legitimate look? And I'm not saying he should make the team out of camp. Again, maybe if he dominates spring training, but it's just that when we're going to the season before, he was kind of the 8. Now he's kind of the 7. And if you're the 7, if you want to be a 6-man rotation, that means you're one more injury away from being on the major league team. The other thing that I can't get out of my mind that's pissing me off, that sucks so bad, is how perfect it would just be to have Christian Scott right now. He didn't have to get Tommy John surgery. Like, that was the prodigal son, and the fact that he was pitching well last year before that little tear came back up, like, that would be perfect right now. But it's just, I still don't think they'll be a little bit reticent to go to Sproat, but I also think that if he shows continued development of those breaking balls and legitimate command of them against major league hitters in the spring, there's nothing else for him to work on, because he has the 2-seamer, he has the changeup, he has the 4-seam fastball, the velocity, the command, everything. It's more of control instead of commands, but if he can actually command the 2 different breaking balls against the 2 different hitters, the sweeper and the curveball, it's like there's really nothing stopping him from getting major league hitters out consistently.
I'm going to throw out the idea too of just a couple other prospects as well, or I guess prospects now, maybe not so much anymore, but maybe Blade Tidwell and Dom Hamill have a chance better than they've ever had as well, just because those have been guys who've been at AAA for a while. If they've made improvements to their game, if there is a clear change in what they've done, they have a fantastic spring. I think it's worth a shot too, especially because those guys are optionable. So you could call him up. If he stinks, you could send him right back down, and it really doesn't screw anything up in your roster. I think there's a possibility that they could go that route too, which is a very much so high risk, low reward type scenario, but maybe that's also what these guys could use. I don't know.
But also, they're definitely just both behind Sproat, both in ceiling and floor for a spot start in the major league. So why even do that? Because he's just better than them. The other name I want to bring up, this is the not sexy name, of course I'm going to bring up, Justin Hagenman. The Mets signed him as an optionable pitcher, as one of the first guys they made a move on, I think in November. He has 3 options. He's a sinker baller. He could probably just come up and be like the new version of Joey Lucchesi, just kind of mess around a little bit and hope to give up 4 runs over 6 innings. But that's just kind of where this pitching depth is right now, which is why Quintana makes sense, but Montas has to be out in 6-day IL to make that happen. I don't know, maybe they are a little bit more comfortable in Sproat than they're leading on publicly, because
did we sign Brandon Waddell? Wasn't that the guy we signed this
Brandon
offseason?
Waddell too. Yes, that's another one we have. He's another option there. But I think he's a non-roster
Is he still
invite.
on the Mets?
I think he's on the full roster right now. I don't know what his 40-man status is, but I know Hagenman has options. I think Hagenman might be on the 40-man as well.
I'm going to take a look at the Mets 40-man. Right now, it does seem like Brandon Waddell might not be on the Mets roster based on what it's showing. Let's see, non-roster invites. I'm going to click the names there. Oh, no, okay. He is a non-roster invite. So Waddell's a non-roster invite. Yeah. Just some other ridiculous names that we could throw out there that could be starting pitching for this team moving forward. They also, could they go just crazy chaos bullpen games for this theoretical spot as well, where it's just Budo and Huascar Brazoban and Griffin Canning, and you just throw all these different names out there and just see what sticks. Max Kranick too, had a decent spring. Maybe he's a guy, if he pitches well, he could fit this spot. It's none of these names are particularly sexy or exciting or fun, and I'm sure Mets fans are not going to be ooh, can't wait to see what Max Kranick can do. I hope he can fill in the Frankie Montas spot for a couple of months. But this is kind of the way that David Stearns operates, especially when he does have these injury player guys. He's not going to go out and go make a huge trade for a Dylan Cease or anybody like that.
No chance. No, and I think, again, that it probably does come down to chaos, few innings at a time. Budo's probably the wild card, but it's not going to be sexy. It's just going to be some guys filling in innings. The Mets also have a lot of road trips in April, so it's going to be off days. So we probably don't even need a 6th starter. They might not need a 5th starter for certain turns through the rotation, but it's definitely just going to be patchwork early, which I know fans are going to love that. Be this is an embarrassing rotation for a team with Juan Soto, but I think it's going to be the classic mess around. The one thing, though, got to say, this puts a lot of pressure on the other guys in the rotation. This puts a lot of pressure on Minaya, puts a lot of pressure on Senga, puts a lot of pressure on David Peterson especially, and a lot of pressure on the Clay Holmes experiment, which you kind of hoped that he could be a chaos guy that kind of drifted into rotation, and then it got figured out. But if anything happens to Senga or Minaya, then it's threat level midnight. Something actually has to happen. That's the fear right now, but hopefully it's also basically a year to the day that we got the Senga injury news from last year. He wound up not pitching, because that was the first place my mind went with Montas, but I don't know. We'll just see what happens here. But I hate the rhetoric going around Twitter where it's the Tigers gave Jack Flaherty the same amount of money as David Stearns gave Frankie Montas. It's not fucking true. Jack Flaherty is making 50% more money than Frankie Montas this year. $17 million contract for 2025 versus a $25 million contract for 2025. It's not the same. It did happen late in the offseason. Would have made sense maybe if we could have waited that long, but there's no possible way that ever would have happened. So that pisses me off.
And we know that when we did our out of the park baseball sim, we got Jack Flaherty, and he
fuck
was
Jack
one of the main
Flaherty.
reasons why we didn't make the playoffs. So fuck him. Fuck Jack Flaherty. We don't want
Didn't
him.
want him.
Didn't want him. We knew in our hearts it was the wrong decision. But I don't know. Anything else to talk about here, or is it time for us to wrap this little delayed emergency episode up?
Time for it to wrap up, because if someone catches me in here, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to get yelled at in Vietnamese.
All right, guys. I'm not even going to do the typical outro. Subscribe, follow us, all that good stuff. Let James be safe in Vietnam, and I'll peace out. See ya.
Catch you guys soon. Let's go Mets.